It's Sunday, so that means another episode of Salty on Religion. And this is this episode's based on a question a viewer posed to me, and it's a good question, and it made me think in that lately, the first few episodes of Salty on Religion kind of focused on seemingly negative aspects of religion or Christianity. Not that they were meant to be negative, but they were just to pose questions that I had about Christianity, the Bible, and whatnot, and just kind of put my opinions and get opinions of what you thought about those subjects. This one, the viewer asked me what was the worst thing, or what is the worst thing that happened to me, that has happened to me. I think it was on a video about why bad things happen to good people, and my response was, right now, really the worst thing that can that happens to me is that I can't be with my kids, and I can't hug my wife and kids and be with them whenever I want. If that's the worst that I go through, my life's pretty good actually at this point. However, there have been times in my past where I look back and at the time they were pretty pretty bad times or pretty dark times in my life. But I look back and kind of put all the pieces together and line them up in a certain perspective. I'm glad I went through all those things. Early, or very early on in my life, around high school, out of my own stupidity, I left home, and I was actually living in my car. What seemed like forever, but I was actually homeless for, I think it was a couple of weeks, until some friends took me in. And you know, those times were pretty dark, and I felt out of control. I felt afraid, but under all that, for some reason, maybe because I didn't know any better, I had this sense that it was gonna be okay, even though I had hit what I thought back then was rock bottom. So that was one episode where something bad, even though it was self-inflicted, happened to me. And I'm not saying I'm a good person, or I was a good person, and I'm not saying that I'm a good person now. I try to be, but it's all relative. Other times, and my son asked me this a few days ago and said, have you ever almost died? And yes, it's kind of conjecture, but I think the top 10 most dangerous jobs, in the top 10 most dangerous jobs, is being a sailor on a working flight deck of a carrier. Now, I guess there are different levels of that, and I did work on a flight deck of a carrier, but not like a jet carrier. I was on a helicopter carrier, but it still doesn't make it any less dangerous. You just have different dangers. Rotor blades going around, people do get blown off the deck, rolling seas, you have to contend with possibilities anytime something comes in for a landing that it could crash, take you out. You could be inside an aircraft working, and something, a plane could come in and crash and take you out. So just inherently being on a flight deck, and sailors do it every day. Sailors doing it right now, not to diminish the dangers for them. It was a dangerous place. So just being on a flight deck is dangerous. And one time in particular, I remember we had just gotten done with a mission whether it be training or whatnot, or delivering supplies. Um, we're done with the operation for the night, shut down, and my job is I have to go up on top of the helicopter. I'll show you a picture here, and inspect the rotor head. My job specialty was to check for cracks with delicate instruments, and make sure that it was flight worthy for the next operation. So it's 11 or 12 o'clock at night. Everything, it was maybe 30 minutes after all the last aircraft had landed, and so I get my gear. I've got my coat on. It was cold. Coat, what we call a float coat. It's a float vest with these inflatable air bladders in case you fall in the water. I had my box, my crack checker, and flight deck helmet. Flight deck helmet here, and I proceed to crawl on top of the aircraft, and the rotor blades fold to make so you can get more of them in the hangar deck or on the flight deck. So I get up to the top of the helicopter in the front, and where I'm standing, there's the blade spindle comes out, and then the blade folds back this way, and I'm standing on a platform, and the rotor head is over here. So there's probably like a 2-foot little box that's surrounds me of metal and carbon fiber. That's what the blade was. And so I'm doing my thing, and all of a sudden I feel the wind kick up. I mean, just like that. I mean, it's like somebody turned the fan on, and literally my feet fell out from under me. And if it wasn't for the blade surrounding me, I just kind of threw my arms and wrapped my arms around the blade and whatever I could grab over on this side. And I mean, you ever see those movies where a guy's like hanging onto a pole and his feet were flapping in the wind? That's what it felt like to me. I was holding on. I didn't have my goggles on, and the chin strap was the only thing really. It felt like it was my flight deck helmet was getting pulled off my head, and I'm holding on for dear life, and you can't breathe. And I later on I found out that there were about 70 knot winds across the flight deck. Well, what happened was somebody in the control, what do you call it, the bridge. It's been many years. Somebody in the bridge got orders to turn into the wind and head in direction X. Well, turning into the wind, and I believe the ship was going about 20 knots. So you got, it's about 25, 27 miles an hour. Something like that. I don't know. A knot is 1.2 miles per hour. But we're going 20 knots into the wind, and the wind was probably blowing 30 or 40, maybe 50 knot gusts into the wind. So I'm it's like 70 mile an hour winds hanging on, and you couldn't breathe, you couldn't hear anything. Guys on the flight deck were falling over, and luckily the flight deck lights were still on, and somebody on the bridge saw what was going on, saw that people were still working on the bridge, and I think it felt like an eternity, but I think it lasted all of maybe 5 minutes, but that was probably the longest 5 minutes of my life. Hanging on for dear life on on top of a helicopter on top of a flight deck. And at the time, our helicopter was, I don't think it was the last one on the round down, which is the back of the straight portion of the flight deck, but I think we were like 2 or 3 spots up from the round down. So if I had been blown off there might have been a chance I wouldn't have gone overboard. But that was probably the most harrowing situation I was in the military. Now, there were other times where, you know, it wasn't windy, it wasn't cold or anything, but normally on a regular basis, the back of the helicopter comes to a point, and to inspect certain parts of the rotor head, I had to climb over the rotor head and sit on this little corner of the helicopter, and when you look down, it's just the ocean down there. There's no there's no net safety net. I mean, the back of the helicopters, you know, here's the flight deck, here's the back of the helicopter, because they shove them back as far as they can to clear the aisle for the runway. So you know, the helicopter's hanging, you know, here's the deck, here's the helicopter, and I'm sitting here. So you know, like I said, maybe I didn't know any better, but one wrong move, I could have been over the side, because I think the flight deck was probably like 40 or 50 feet above the water, and then the top of the aircraft where I was sitting was another, I would say probably like 15, 16, 18 feet. I don't know. I don't have the numbers, but so those were two times, or few times, where, you know, potentially bad things happened to me in my lifetime that I can recall. But looking back, you know, I honestly believe that if you will, God was looking after me and making sure I was safe, and that I would make it through the ordeal. So, a couple of positive things, even though the root is from seemingly negative situations. But so, if you have stories of where you survived potentially deadly situations, or times where, you know, you didn't think you could get through it, but your faith got you through it, let me know. Make a VR. It's what this is about, to exchange information and share, for me to share my faith anyway, and I'd like to hear yours. That's all I got. Take it easy. Thanks. That's see, something bad just happened. All right, take it easy, guys.